Welcome everyone. Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us for our event on the importance of the standardization in Latin America and the Caribbean countries. This event is co-organized by the International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications and our government advisory body member, LACChain. We are really pleased that you are here with us at this later hour. And the event aims to raise awareness of the relevance of standardization as a tool for governments in Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to first tell you very briefly about some house rules at the beginning. This event is being recorded and will be made available on INATBA's website after the event. We very much encourage you to ask questions to our guests, to our panelists. Please use the chat function to post the questions, or you can also raise your hand to speak. Please stay muted when you're not speaking, and you can unmute yourself, of course, if you want to raise a question. So without any further delay, I would like to give the floor to give us the introductory remarks to Albi Rodriguez Emilio from LACChain. Albi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vara. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's okay, the audio and the video. Perfect, great. But first, thank you very much for the opportunity to prepare this. I think first meeting or work or you know, the first reunion about this important topic for us. For all the people that are not familiar with LACChain, LACChain is an initiative led by the Inter-American Development Bank, specifically by the Innovation Lab of the Inter-American Development Bank for the development of the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America and the Caribbean. And for this purpose, just the 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago, the IDB Lab decided to promote the development of several things, but the most important, I think, was the infrastructure, and a specific infrastructure that could be useful for governments and for entities, regulated entities or companies, startups, corporations, universities, for the use or to develop on top solutions for this thing that now we call the Web3, with the use of sovereign identity, verified credentials, and all those new elements that are changing and are showing a new chapter of the technological interaction that we have around the world. And since the beginning, INATBA, of course, was very important partner in the process, but for the specific topic about the standardization for LACChain was very relevant to be part and to be aligned with the standardizations bodies and the work that started by 2017 by the ISO, but by 2019, LACChain architecture was recognized as one of the 14 reference of the for type of DLT type of blockchains that were running and function around the world with another big players in the sector. And for us, it's very relevant if you want to do something and develop something with this purpose to be for the solutions, cross-border solution around the world is absolutely is mandatory to have the complying with the standardizations around the world, but not in all the countries. It's not only in Latin America, not in all the countries. People see the importance of the standardization bodies, the work that those bodies are doing, building, and what do we have behind. And our idea is to have this excellent meeting with those relevant speakers that are gonna come to us to talk about not only what happened in Europe and how they have been facing all the challenge, but also in countries like Spain or the organization, the entities that are working with this in Latin America, and how can we help from our side? How can we promote this? How can we spread more information, and how can we share more information about the standardization and the standards as a part of the technology? And for this reason, for me, is a pleasure to have the opportunity to stay here, to have the floor for the specific professional and specialist in this matter, like we will have in the next 1.5 hour or 1 hour 15 minutes. This is more or less. I mean, we at LACChain, we are participating strongly in different in all. I think in all the standardization bodies that are working with the DLT topic, but the final aim of this meeting is to build and to create more pieces of information that we can spread with in the whole region, just to invite, to motivate, and to have bridges. And for sure, INATBA is the main actor, is the most important actor for this purpose, and the governmental advisory body and all the work that INATBA is doing in all the working groups. And this is the idea to produce and to have this discussion that we hope that will be interesting for all the people that are watching this web.
Thank you so much, Elby, for the words, and we are very happy to have you here at the event. I would like to now give the floor to the Executive Director of INATBA, Ricardo Simoes, for his introduction.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here and to have this session jointly with LACChain on the importance of standardization in Latin American and Caribbean countries. INATBA, for those who don't know INATBA, as a global association of companies, public bodies, and academics that pave the way to a positive and constructive adoption of blockchain technology and DLT technologies. So to that regard, we converge the different stakeholders into aiming at a sustainable development for the industry. I'm proud to say that INATBA has so much talent within this working group in the Standards Committee, with the work of our chairs and co-chairs, Ismael and Jill. And I'm also very proud to see that INATBA has a contributing role, kind of like a nation to the standardization, to the standard development organizations like ISO and others. And I think the importance of this kind of sessions is to move forward with the work in terms of standards that is by definition long and thorough. And I'm just, again, it's a privilege and a responsibility from the side of INATBA to make sure that work is advancing, and we are contributing for a global and regional discussions on the standardization. So I congratulate you all for your participation, and I hope to learn as much as you on these topics and the questions that can arise from this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. Thank you both, Ricardo and Albie, for their words and for the introduction on this event. Going forward, I would like to give a warm welcome to our first speaker from the European Commission, Mr. Emilio Davila. Emilio has worked in the DG Connect since 2013. He's responsible for coordination of ICT standardization strategies, liaising with standards development organizations who are active in the ICT sector, and in particular, building bridges between research and standardization, and how standardization contributes to innovation. In his capacity, he is also responsible for following up with international ICT standardization, which includes cooperation with EU trading partners on ICT standardization. Emilio, I would like to give the floor to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Vara. Thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Can I share my screen, maybe?
Absolutely. I'm stopping sharing mine.
Oops, now I have lost.
And you should be able to share now.
Yeah, here I go. So, okay, can you see the screen well?
Yes, perfect. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. So thanks for the invitation. I'm going to explain to you about the importance of standards to the European Union and what is the EU standardization strategy, which, as you know, is now high in the political agenda of the European Union. And then I will also talk a little bit about the opportunities of cooperations with other regions on international standardization, and in particular with Latin America and Caribbean. So standards have major roles, and here you have most important ones, compliance, and these are, for instance, standards that provide presumption of conformity with essential requirements that are included in the regulation and with policy objectives. For instance, all that allow to introduce, let's say, a telephone in the market. As you know, they have this CE mark or FCC in the United States, and the presumption of conformity with the requirements for the regions, normally related to implementing the international standards. Interoperability is, I don't think I need to talk about ability of different devices, services, and processes to communicate with each other and exchange data and understand themselves. And also the possibility of creating broader ecosystems, whether the different market players can collaborate and include their innovations and technologies there. And if we look in particular to ICT standards, being this something, a webinar organized by INATBA, I think is relevant. Of course, as I said, the interoperability of systems and services, and this in the European Union is very important. We are 27 member states. We need cross-border services that are interoperable irrespective of the country where the citizen is. And I think this can also very well apply to Latin America, where if you have interoperable systems, then you can use them in the different countries. They also help to spread the innovation, so you can build a lot of innovation on top of the standards. We have seen, due to having the standards on 4G, 5G, then you can add additional top-up innovation. And avoid reinventing the wheel. Why, again, to start a system since the very beginning when you can get the standards and include your innovation on top of it. They help open new markets, expanding the market, bringing down the cost and increase competition in the market. If you have a standard that is used in the different markets, then you can implement it and then be able to operate in that market. If you have a closed standard or closed proprietary system, this is more difficult for you because you have to have agreements with the one that have the control of that technology. They create trust and confidence to the consumers. If something is in accordance to the standard, normally you are expecting that it brings some security, it complies with safety requirements, allows meaningful comparison. We know all the example of the labels for energy consumption, and then you can see whether it's A, B, C, D, E. And then also avoiding vendor lock-in. if, for instance, a public procurement use standards, then any company can implement these standards and apply to provide the services. If you are looking to a particular company, good luck when you need to renew your contract with that company and you have to renegotiate your maintenance. And of course, also networking issues of participating into standardization. So that they have a lot of advantages. And some say that those that rule the standards can rule the world. Maybe exaggerated, but they have not only a technology importance, but also a political importance. And that's why we adopted a package on standardization in the Commission on a very nice days, the 2 of 22. And this is composed of the communication where we explain the EU standardization strategy. Then there is some technical amendment to the regulation on standardization, and of course, report to the European Parliament and Council on the implementation of regulation, and the annual Union Work Programme, which is an interesting document because it includes the priorities of the European Commission for the year to come. So, as I've told you, standards are at the heart of the EU policy agenda, because we have realized that standardization is not only technical specification, but it includes also a political component. And you see there is a lot of harmonized standard in support of EU legislation, but there are also much more tens of thousands of standards that provide support to compliance with EU policy, for instance, of promoting Internet of Things or a connected world or connected Europe. And again, I don't repeat why standard is an essential part of every delay, all the mobile phones, or making sure that the toys that use our children are safe and they're not going to suffocate because they have very small pieces, things like that. But also, there are new challenges in the world, and this is why we need also an EU standardization strategy. For instance, we see now with all the issues caused by the war in Ukraine, with the shortage of energy sources, the shortages of microchips. If we have some standardization methodologies that allow to have more suppliers in the value chains, that can only help. And of course, this enables many of our flagship projects in the European Union regarding hydrogen, renewable, circular economy. We have seen recently, finally, it has been adopted, the common charger based on the USB-C standards that can help you to remove plenty of waste from the electronic system, but also to support artificial intelligence, ethics, access to data, etc. A lot of policies of the Union the European Union are supported by standards. In the strategy, we identify the issues. So the geopolitics of standardization, we see that there are a lot of countries around the world that are using standards in a political issue. For instance, we have recently the Chinese standardization strategy, the United States as well. They sorted out, but the Chinese is clearly pursuing geopolitical ambitions. There is increased complexity in the worldwide role and also need for scarce resources, and also in the standardization. There are many, and in particular in the ICT and digital area, there are many standard development organizations. And we have to ensure that our democratic values are inserted into standardization, that we don't develop standards that are against the values of the European Union. We need to have good governance in the European standardization system, being open and inclusive and democratic. And then also regarding the priority setting and speed is important. Of course, there is a need to have the right balance between the technical development of standards, bringing all the stakeholders' views together, but we need an agile system. And for that, we also need to be sure what are the priorities of the European Union in terms of standardization. And we need these standards for the twin transition, digital and green economy, and resilience. The COVID-19 was a good example also why we need the standards. And I see we are now in a webinar using standards, and there are more and more teleworking activities that without the standardization could not have taken place. Then how we address the issues, how basically we have 5 big strands in the European strategy that the Commission is proposing. Priority setting and speed. So we are setting a high-level forum together with stakeholders, member states, standardization organizations to assist the Commission in defining the standardization priorities for the next year. That will be reflected in the annual Union Work Programme, and this will be the basis also of the standardization budget for those actions. We have have nominated a chief standardization officer in the European Union to express the political importance of that. This high-level forum will be chaired possibly by the chief standardization officer together with the commissioner, and it's expected that the ministers and CEOs and CTOs will participate, so raising the profile of the standardization. Standardization should be known and discussed at sea level. Good governance principle, there is this amendment of the regulation that, by the way, was agreed yesterday by the Council and the Parliament, which is basically for the decision related to standards to support these harmonized standards to support regulation. This will be done by the national standardization organizations from all the member states and European Economic Area national standardization bodies, which brings all the different stakeholders so more open. We are also asking the European Standardization Organization, and we are trying to get the same in International Standardization Organization, more inclusiveness and integrity, and having an open access to the standards so everybody can have access to them. And then also, there is a strong commitment to improve the European standardization system, but we are also thinking if there is not available standards, then for those regulation or policies that are needed to be able to identify other ways to provide the specifications. Regarding the geopolitics of standard, and this is also important here, we are trying to have more cooperation with the member states, which are in some cases the participants, the members of the international standardization organizations, to defend the European approach. And we are defending a global, secure and accessible internet in the same grounds that are there, so democratic, based on openness, and they are backed by international standards, in particular those that have been developed by ITF. We provide EU funding for cooperation and pilots with African countries and EU neighborhood, but also for international cooperation on standardization, including to support of our regulatory dialogues and digital partnerships. And we want to continue actions with like-minded countries. And if you ask me my opinion, cooperation with Latin America is part of these things. I will come back in the next slide. Then we are also trying to insert more resources into the standardization work, bringing all the different experts there. And for that is considering since the very inception, so when you are planning research and development, how this could be translated into innovation and standardization. So we will use more even the EU-funded support to research and development projects and pilots to standardization, because there you can bring these results into technical standards. We are funding the participation of European experts in standardization with actions like StandICT.eu, but also we have created a standardization boosters that could ensure additional funding for those research projects that have produced results that are worthy to bring into standardization. And then we are asking also to the European standardization organizations to consider integrate open source solutions, which will create a more agile and rapid path for implementation and can be available for all the partners. And something important, standardization standards are bottom-up approach, and there you need the experts. And we have seen that in some cases, you sit in a standardization working group, technical committee, and there are, to be honest, very old people, including me, and we need a new flesh there. So we need to make more emphasis on education and bringing more standardization skills to make it attractive for all the researchers. Because honestly now people tend to think that the standardization is not exciting, but it's very complicated, esoteric world, plenty of acronyms, for instance. So coming back to the cooperation on international standardization, for instance, this is an example of what we are doing. This is the INDICO project. There, with particular target countries, we were together with ETSI, the European Telecommunication Standardization Institutes, carrying out cooperation activities with the different countries, including Brazil and Latin America. And this allows us around these topics that you have in the screen, 5G, blockchain, cybersecurity, Internet of Things, intelligent transport systems, etc., to organize workshops to have a more clear overview of what's going on in the different regions through studies, to be able to interact with both government standardization organizations, researchers and companies that are active there, and for instance, trying to see whether we could have common standards. We had a very interesting workshop both with Brazil and with Argentina, for instance, on common standards for Internet of Things, but I'm sure there are other activities. You mentioned, Albi, in your introduction, EID as part of the blockchain infrastructures. This, in my opinion, is a good example of where we could cooperate, see how the standards that are producing for the EIDAS, the electronic identification regulation in Europe, could be also applied in Latin America and Caribbean areas, for instance, because that will facilitate the operation of the different companies in both regions. And with this, I think I'm with my 10 minutes. Thank you very much. I'm able to exchange questions with you.
Thank you so much, Emilio. And going forward, I would like to give the floor to our second speaker from Spain, Mr. Cesar Perez Girinos. He is the head of the committee CTN 71 SC307 at the Spanish Standards Organization, UNED. He is also the member of Blockchain Expert Policy Advisory Board at OECD. And he is also the information technology expert in Banco de España. Cesar, it's really a pleasure to have you here, welcome you here, and the floor is yours. And you are muted. You're trying to speak. Can you hear us, Cesar?
Sorry, my computer was not responding to the Alt-8 shortcut.
Okay, no problem.
I think that you have my presentation that I sent you for today. So you are so kind, please open it. And, I will. Okay.
Just a second. I'm opening it.
If it doesn't open, I can try to share my screen if you prefer.
It's opening. Sorry, it just takes time.
No, don't worry.
Apologies about that. If you want to start, and I will. Share.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. First of all, for inviting me. Really to invite us, the Spanish standard setting body, UNE, that is the official standard setting body in Spain. So in this capacity, we are running mirror committees to all ISO and SEN committees on formal standards in Spain. One of these mirror committees is the subcommittee 307 that I chair. That is the mirror committee to the ISO TC307 that already was introduced by Albi and also commented by Emilio. We are being very active in several standards related to blockchain technologies. In fact, I prefer to talk about DLTs, distributed ledger technologies, because there is a lot of technologies that has nothing to do with blockchain. So we want to have an open mind about what will be the evolution of these technologies. Saying this, we enjoy the benefit of the experience of a LACChain consortium in Spain that did a very strong legal analysis about the European regulation, mainly related to data protection, the GDPR, that I don't know if all attendants are familiar with, but is the European regulation on data protection that has some kind of, let's say, conflicted points with these distributed ledger technologies, especially related to the right to be forgotten, that this is very difficult to match with the non-editable characteristic of DLTs. And well, the legal expert of LACChain consortium were analyzing this problem, and they proposed to the Spanish standard setting body to standardize the management of identity elements on blockchain in a way that is compatible with European data protection regulations. We developed this standard in our committee. Exactly. Well, now I can go back a bit in this presentation. You go to third slide.
It's me. Sorry, Mr. Cesar. It's me. Could you see now the screen, right?
Yeah, yes, perfectly.
Okay, I will guide you. You just let me know. Next slide.
Okay, so go please to the second slide. Next. This is what this presentation covered. This composition of committee, what was the work program for this current year, and what has been the cooperation with international standard setting bodies, mainly ISO and ETSI, that is the European Telecommunication Standard Institute. Next one. Ismael, please, next slide. Yes, this is the composition of this standard setting body in Spain. We have a lot of present of SMEs, a large corporation, and also public administration. For example, I work for the Central Bank of Spain, and I'm the honor of chairing this group of real blockchain experts, because a lot of people believe that I'm a top blockchain expert. That is not true. I know a lot of people that is doing an excellent work, like Ismael in this working group that are leading the technology and mainly related to identity management on blockchain. Next one, please. Well, we are currently starting a work that is an inventory of distributed ledger technologies that has been enjoying Spanish public financing, because we want to be sure that our committee is representative enough of the Spanish industry on this sector that has a lot of participants, and is sometimes they don't have enough time or resources to participate on standardization. And even if we try to encourage them to take benefit of initiative of the European Union that Emilio has been talking about, like ICT, in order to achieve support for standardization activities, while sometimes SMEs are fintech related, for example, don't have enough time to work with us, but at least we enjoy the presence of the LACChain consortium that brings a lot of expertise on these topics. We have two main work streams. One is the national one, and we try to develop a new standard 71308 to support the management of digital evidences, for example, the evidences that come from forensics and so on, and is led by Ismael Arribas. This is a very challenging group because we joined legal experts and technical people, and sometimes it's difficult to find the common language for them to work. But we have some hopes that this work will be completed next year. And also in the first working group, GT1, is led by Dr. Nacho Alamillo. Ignacio Alamillo is one of the top European experts on cryptography and public administration, and is advisor of European Commission on the new eIDAS regulation. And this regulation is related to the shared digital identity initiative of European Commission. But this working group has already was able to complete the standards 71307, that is the management of the identity elements on blockchain, is currently working more at the European level. We use this working group mainly to agree the position of Spanish companies to have a common position towards the European standards on this area of the identity on blockchain. But we are open also to our colleagues from Latin American countries, because the agreements of UNE with other Latin American institutions. We think that is one of the goals of today's talk should be explore the possibilities to work in common, both to convey the experience of European regulation to Latin American countries that could be interested in the issue, but also to take the advantage of the experience of Latin American colleagues that we know that they are very advanced in some countries with a lot of real hands-on experience on these issues. And we will be glad to add them to our committee in order to raise their influence to the European and global institutions like ISO. Next one, please. We are also starting, well, this is the initiative that I already explained about digital evidence management. I don't want to talk too much about it. If you like, we can talk later on. And also this translation to the European standard of the Spanish standard on identity management on blockchain of decentralized identity issues. And this one. And these are this is a summary of the cooperation that we have with international standard setting bodies, mainly with ISO. And I want to call your attention on this slide, because if you see the yellow line, you will see that the vocabulary on blockchain and the distributed ledger technology was already approved in 2020, but is currently on review. To me, is this kind of volatility is something new in the standards arena. And this say a lot about the need to mature more about these technologies, because if we even cannot develop a standard on vocabulary that is not able to last more 1 year, it seems that this technology is very, very in its infancy. I think maybe we can talk or discuss this later on also. And this one. And also, finally, these are some specifications that are being developed in the European Telecommunication Standard Institute, on which we have an industry specification group that is led by a Spanish member of our group representing Telefonica company. And we have a liaison officer that is also Ismael, that is our kind of ubiquitous representative in a lot of technical initiatives related with standards across the world, also in the International Telecommunication Union. And well, I don't want to extend too much. We conclude with the email address of our secretary, that is a Chinese one, Amanda Su, that you can mail her and ask for information about our group and the possibility to work with it. Thank you very much, Bara. I don't know if I spent too much time or it's
absolutely fine. Thank you so much, Cesar. Thank you for your presentation and the information. And last but not least, I would like to give the floor to our final speaker before we head into the discussion. And that's Cory Eduino from COPAND. It's my pleasure to welcome her here. She's currently the Executive Secretary of the Pan-American Standards Commission, COPAND. She also served as the Executive Director of the Bolivian Institute of Standardization and Quality, and she specializes in standardization, conformity assessment, and international negotiations. Cory, we are very glad to have you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bara, and thank you for inviting COPAN to this workshop to know a little bit about what we are doing in our region. So COPAN is the Pan American Standards Commission. Okay. We have a membership of the national standards bodies of all the Pan American region. Right now we have 31 members. I will show you later on our membership state. But it's important to say that our organization was founded in '62. So we have some experience, and at the beginning, COPAN was developing Pan American standards, but after some time, we sent some survey to our members to see if our standards were being used in the countries and were useful for them, because as you know, we unlike the European Union, we don't have a united market in America. We have different agreements on trade, but in sub-regions, we don't have anything that united all the Pan American region. So we stopped doing Pan American standards. We are only working with one technical committee right now where there's no international standards, and we try to promote that our members be more active in international standardization organizations. The vision of COPAN then is to promote the cooperation for development of the region, and also have a relevant national standardization in the bodies, but also an active participation in international standardization. And of course, we also promote that our members are applying conformity assessment procedures according to international practices. Our strategic plan for 2021-2025 have two main pillars. One is building capacity. So we give a lot of support, training, and cooperation to our members to develop all the capacities to develop standards according to the international practices, and but also increase the participation in international standardization. And for that, we also have developed some training, some cooperation. We promote our members to have a mutual cooperation between them. So maybe have some mentorships or training arrangements in our region to participate in international cooperation. But we also identify some technical committees of international organizations, especially in ISO, and we create some focal groups to mirror what is happening in those technical committees and work in our region to see how our members are participating or not, and why they are not participating, and what is going on in the technical committee that is of interest in our region. So this is our membership. So as you can see, we have North America, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean members. And we also have some adherent members. You will recognize some NSDs from Europe and from Asia. And we have an agreement with our peers in the region, so the Inter-American Accreditation Corporation and the Inter-American Metrology System. And we create the three regional organizations, the Quality Infrastructure Council for the Americas. So we try to develop some activities that are from the interest of these three main activities: standards, metrology, and accreditation in our region, and try to also have some cooperation. So now we are working in one regional project with funds from Germany for circular economy. These are, so as I was telling you, we are having just one technical committee that is active, and we have some focal groups in some technical committees, especially in ISO. So you can see, for instance, in conformity assessment, in environment management, in tourism, in matters that related to consumers, quality management, circular economy, biodiversity. But we also create a specific focal group for IAC, to follow a little bit what's going on in that international organization. The difference is that from our 31 members, 30 are members of ISO, but in IEC, only 8 are full members of IEC. So that's why our focus is more in ISO. This is the participation of our region in ISO. As you can see, we have 21 full members in ISO, 7 that are correspondent member, and 2 subscribers members. So you can see that the big difference of economy and development in our region is huge. We have the biggest economies and the smallest economies in our region. So this is a challenge for us to help our members to be able to not to participate in international development standards, but also to use those standards and make sure that all the stakeholders are aware of the importance of using standards in the country. As you can see, even if we have a huge amount of members participating as P members in technical committees in ISO, we have very few that are holding secretariat in those technical committees. And this is, I believe Bara will share our presentations. You can have all this information, but as you can see, the North American countries are the most active members in technical committees in ISO and holding secretariats and being P members. We have South American countries also that have some very important participation, and then Caribbean and Central America, very, very few participation. These are the technical committees in ISO that are of most interest in our region according to their participation. So we have developing countries matters, conformity assessment, tourism, environmental, food products, consumer policies, and circular economy. As you can see here, we don't have the even the 307 technical committee here in this chart, and this is why we have very few members that are participating in 307. As P members, we have Brazil, Canada, Jamaica, and USA. Jamaica is a country that have my attention because it's normal that North American countries and of course Brazil are participating as key members, but I was surprised that Jamaica is a key member. That's a good surprise, of course. And then as observers, we have Argentina, Colombia, El Salvador, Mexico, and Uruguay. So very few are participating. And these also reflect that 3 years before, so before the pandemic, we have in our General Assembly meeting, we have some workshops, and we organized one about emerging technologies, and blockchain was one of the items that we addressed in this workshop. And when I asked for experts to give the lectures, the response in our region is that there's not enough expertise to give a presentation, so we have to have European experts to give the presentation, and from the United States, of course. So I hope this is changing in our region, and maybe with the collaboration with your organization, we can have more interest in our region about the new technologies, the emerging technologies. So this is the presentation about COPAN. I know it was very fast, but I hope you had some ideas of how we work in our region. And of course, I'm here open to receive your questions.
Thank you so much, Corey, for your presentation. And as was mentioned, all the presentations will be shared with the participants after the event. And we are going now into the second part of the event, which is the sort of panel discussion, for which we very much encourage you to post questions you might have for the speakers. And I would like to give the floor to the moderators of the discussion, Albi and also Ismael Arribas, who is the co-chair of INATBA's standardization committee. He's also representing company Confood. And Albi and Ismael, you can please start the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bara, and thank you, Corey, Cesar, and Emilio, because I mean the information is very, very relevant, very interesting for all the members of our network. Because, but I would like to have this conversation more informal, but with a specific question for you guys. I think that in the case of Emilio, it's amazing to see the work that the European Union have been developing, and I don't know if we want to start just saying, with all your experience, Emilio, I mean, what are the main challenge and opportunities that you see with Latin America from the side? You already mentioned, you said that this is a strategic point for the European Union, but it would be great to, if you can develop a little more about I mean, the challenge, because you have learned a lot about the challenge and opportunities that you see.
Yeah, thank you, Albi. As I said, I think that Latin America is a continent where there could be good opportunities of cooperation with the European Union. Of course, the challenge is, and I think Corey was explaining it well, that yeah, in our case, we have a single market that by definition needs common standard. In your case, there are different markets, although there were some initiatives of creating some common markets over there. Opportunities, I think there are plenty of opportunities. Because if you look at all what standardization can bring in terms of cross-border services, then you see that having common standards could be very beneficial for a region like Latin America. It's something curious to see that you have one main language there, 2, 3 maximum, whereas we have some 24. Then we have a common market, and this is not yet the case in Latin America. So having common standards that could pave the way for cross-service, and I think also to motivate the cooperation and the activity of the companies in the two regions. I think, for instance, we are developing, if you look at blockchain in particular, we have the European blockchain service infrastructure being developed. You have some activities in LACChain. So we could look at how to make these different nodes of the infrastructure interoperable, so it will be easier to be able to operate in both infrastructure for there. This is one example. Again, I see possibilities like electronic identification, because that make easier the operation of the different companies. Other possibilities, just name it, having common standards for Internet of Things, that could also make easier the development of all these application and services in the regions. And we are really open to launch cooperation mechanisms. We are launching some political dialogues also with some Latin American countries. Standardization could be, for instance, part of it.
Thank you very much, for sure. And I think that we have a lot of possibilities around this. And in the case of it's very interesting that we said, and you said that the challenge that you have different jurisdiction cultures but the same language, and at the same time that we have the same language, okay, you have solved the problem of different languages in the harmonization of the standards, and this is something that could sound simple, but I want to make the point with the point that you mentioned, Cesar, about the vocabulary, about the possibility to have an initiative in the Ibero-American region or Pan-Hispanic, region that could be helpful for the development of the discussion. I don't know, what do you want to say about it?
Well, first of all, I will say that there is a very funny sentence about the common languages in Europe that one boss of me years ago say that Europe is being built on top of English misunderstanding. I think that sometimes, as we are not native English speakers, sometimes the goodwill is more powerful than the misunderstandings that happen when you talk to English. In fact, yesterday I have a really funny issue because I was called having a teleconference with two English-speaking organizations, and they discovered at the beginning of the meeting that they had a strong misunderstanding and the meeting didn't was ahead. So sometimes there's more the goodwill of trying to do things common that the language barriers. This is specific about the language. In relation with DLT, I think that we have a lot of troubles coming from the identification of these technologies with cryptocurrencies and this kind of issues. And they raise a lot of difficulties because in some sense the interest of crypto world is different of the opportunities of using these technologies, as you was explaining. The European blockchain services infrastructure really has nothing to do with the problems that non-permission networks need to manage. In fact, for example, the European Union has created a pilot regime for supporting market financial infrastructures on blockchain, but is limited to permission networks. So I think that this is the kind of subtlety that is difficult to manage to accommodate all the interest in standard setting bodies, because it's a totally legitimate attempt of the crypto world trying to encourage the use of, let's say, Ethereum, that is the de facto standard on this area. But at the same time, if you want to be able to have legally binding networks like is required to do real most of the important applications that we foresee in the future for these technologies, I think that it requires a strong identity management, and sometimes you find some surprising requirements. For example, British members of the European Standards Organization don't want to identify strongly network elements. So it's a very strange situation, which it seems that they are asking for some features that are against cybersecurity basic requirements and so on. So, of course, there are geopolitical facts that are related to this, but I don't want to spend too much about this unless it's of interest of the audience. I want to take the opportunity to answer one of the questions that has been raised by the audience. That this whole small companies can participate actively on standardization activity. We suggest that they do what the LACChain consortium did in Spain. That they create is a consortium that has created a standard committee inside of the organization that is acting as a mirror committee or mirror committee of ISO TC307. So they can convey their requirements or their results as they did with the identity initiative that we standardized on UNE. And I think that this is a good example of how small companies can participate actively on standardization.
Thank you. Ismail, you want to say something? Sorry.
Yes, I want to enter into action. I want to join also with thank yous to all of you for your acquiescence and share this complex topic about how to save the world, standards to save the world, something like Emilio said at the very beginning. But I want to convey two of the questions that we have in the chat with this geopolitical component of the standards that we were talking. I want to launch the question for Cory, Emilio. Slightly was responding also from Cesar. But how affect this geopolitical component in a multi-stake environment, let's say, and how this international cooperation works in your entities, in your institutions? Cory, probably you could be the one, and also if you elaborate further to the governmental level as well, with the private sector at the end of your point could be perfect, and small and medium enterprises, because we cover two questions in one shot from the chat. Thank you, Cory.
Okay, thank you, Ismail. Well, as I told you before, we have a difference with the European Union, and normally we set standards when there's trade agreements between countries. Standards helps to access market, complying with what should be safety or quality or environment or whatever the requirement is. In our region, we have some agreements, like in Mercosur, in South America, the Andean community, in the Caribbean, the CARICOM, Central America also has its own FTA, and of course North America. And for them, it works to harmonize standards to facilitate trade. But those trade agreements are very different between them. So, of course, Mercosur is trying to be a united market. So they have their Mercosur standards. But in the Andean community, we don't have the same. And Andean standard doesn't replace a national standard. So there's two standards that coexist. So it's very difficult to say which standards prevail. So that's why in Copan, of course, we work with all these sub-regional organizations. So Mercosur has their own association for standards. CARICOM has CrossQ. Central America are trying to have their own organization. The Andean community has their own. And for the North American, also they have some tools to harmonize their standards. So as Copan, what we are doing is try to go directly to international standards. So help our members to be able to participate. So we are not only adopting and translating standards that have been developed by others regions, but try that our members are part of having voice to say, this is what is happening in our region. This technology applies or not, doesn't apply yet to our technology, to our region and things like that. So for that, we prepare them, we approach them to the technical committees that are of interest of them. So this is what we are doing. We are more a cooperation organization than a standard organization, if you want to. Also we have NSB. The structure of the NSBs in our region are very different. We have governmental, we have private organization, we have in the governmental organization, the ones that are completely separate from government, but they are public. But you have also very small NSBs that still depend of one department in a ministry, and they depend of the decisions in the ministry. The big difference are in the public, especially those who depends on a ministry. When there's changement of government, they change a lot of the staff. So we have to begin again with all the developing capacities and
process.
why it's important. Yes. So these are the big difference, and we try for them to include SMEs. In the majority of the NSBs, there's no charge to participate in the technical committee. Some have charges to be able to participate. So this could be open to SMEs, but of course, SMEs maybe doesn't have the experts or the time to be there. The pandemics really helped because now most of the technical committees meet online. So you have experts that have more time to participate, and also for different regions, because some NSBs have the main office in the capital and not always have the opportunity to invite other regions of the country. Mm-hmm. So with the pandemics, we have all this inclusion that is happening. That is very interesting for standard development. But yes, include SMEs in the process of developing standards and using standards is still a big challenge in our region.
Okay, before your reply, Emilio and Cesar, because I think this question is very interesting. We have another question here and okay, let's continue the brainstorming. Emilio, Cesar, in this order, and afterwards, I want to launch one which could be your recommendation to mitigate the influence, for instance, in case of a national mirror. There is a consortium that influence, but in Copan, if I listen correctly, there are presence from more members from one specific area. How is there any recommendation to manage this governance because probably could be influence from the United States in your case, and the region could not feel so comfortable for some issues in their political issues. So that could be after the brainstorming, if you wish. So Emilio, you can go with the same question I raise, and then Cesar, I think you raise your hands. I saw you. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Isma, thanks. Now in Europe, the situation is slightly different. So as you know, we have an European standardization system where you have 3 European standardization organizations and the European Standardization Committee, which is somehow similar to ISO at the international level, CENELEC, which is for electrotechnical, and they are the members of the national standardization bodies. And then we have ETSI, which is more active in the telecom and ICT space, where there are also participation of national delegations, but there are direct membership from industries. And these 3, of course, they also receive some support from the European Union, because they are also in charge of developing the harmonized standards in support of regulation, which is quasi-law, is part of the acquis of the European Union. Also, the one difference is if you have an European standard, immediately all the national standards are repealed, and the European standard is the one that applies throughout the whole union, so facilitating the single market and the digital single market. The relation with international, CEN and CENELEC, they have agreement, the Frankfurt and Vienna, with ISO and IEC. So if there is a standard that is dealt at ISO IEC level, normally this is dealt internationally there. There may be mirror groups in CEN-CENELEC, and they may then either they adopt the international standard as such, or they may add some additional requirements that are only for the European side. The interesting question you made is how we ensure that there are enough European participation in the international standardization. And there is, for instance, one of the major points of the European strategy. So we are trying to have coordination with, on one side, the member states and also the national standardization bodies to identify where there is a need of European experts to participate to defend European values. Because one issue, for instance, that Cesar was mentioning, GDPR, the data protection regulation. If there is an international standard in which the specifications are infringing the GDPR, that would mean that it cannot be implemented in Europe. That would be very unfortunate. So it's much better that European experts explain, hey guys, you are developing some specifications that are against the GDPR, take attention, this is how you can sort it out, and then to ensuring that the international standard is applicable in Europe. But for that, we are funding the participation of experts, either by the funding research projects or with actions like StanICT.eu, where we pay experts for small grants, but that helps them to participate in technical committees and making the travels. Because unfortunately, even if now there are many hybrid meetings, it's true that if you have a meeting of ISO in, let's say, in the Pacific region, then the next one in the European and the next one in the American, that means a lot in cost of travel and resources. And this is in particular a case for SMEs. And this is unfortunate because SMEs, they have a huge potential of innovation and bringing the state-of-the-art technologies, not only the state-of-the-art, but bringing more innovation into standardization. And we have seen it, that they are really the engine of the innovation. So in Europe, what we do is we support the SMEs by different actions. With direct actions like StanICT, for instance, we in particular aim at funding SME experts, but also by asking ESOs to reduce the membership fees of the SMEs and facilitating. We want to promote inclusiveness also at international level, and there we will need to cooperate and also with our national standardization bodies to see that ISO ICIT level. And also, for instance, something that we are doing is funding association representative of SMEs. We are funding standards for business, a small business for standards association, which try to defend the interests of SMEs in the different standardization bodies, in particular in the European standardization organizations, trying to reduce this harden and make life easier and participation of SMEs a little bit easier.
Okay, thank you very much, Cesar. You had the the hands up before in the same sense. So,
well, I have just raised my hand because I noticed that there is a question pending to answer to Maria Vidal that is asking me about this DLT projects inventory. And I want to explain here that our main goal is to identify what are the projects that has been received public funding on this technology. So probably if she wants to do something similar in Latam, maybe it's not enough detail to the proposal that she wants to do. But I'm going to share now my email address. So if we can be in contact and maybe share the complete form that we prepare for this inventory, maybe we can cooperate doing something together.
thank you.
This was my first piece to raise my hand. About the other question that was about SMEs participation of standardization, I think that Emilio has been perfect speaker about the topic that Stand ICT is something that should work for a company in Europe or maybe then for other places if there are some kind of agreement with European. So I think that is that I would like to explain. Regarding the topic of geopolitics.
Sorry, Cesar, your voice is a little bit like.
Okay, maybe now you are hearing better.
Yes, you can continue.
Okay, sorry, my apologize. I don't know if you want to me repeat something before. I can do. Well, going ahead, I think that there is a lot of changes. Another question is asking for climate change sustainability. One of the issues that has been blamed to these technologies that are climate debatable. I would say that there is a lot of energy consumption for these technologies, for some of them. I can explain that one of the projects that I didn't explain in my former intervention is that in UNE we are going to start a proposal that probably we are going to bring directly to the European Standard Committee of SEN about a standard to reflect information about green economy to be reflected in blockchain. For those of you that are familiar with financial markets, there is a word that they say greenwashing to refer to the fake reports about the sustainability of some actions of companies. And we see that there is an opportunity to provide a support traceability on blockchain to provide a cheap warranty that the reports of companies saying that they are doing sustainable activities are real. But it's a very specific topic that probably is not appropriate to talk today. But we offer also to be contacted about this. But I want to talk a bit about the geostrategical aspects of these technologies because I think that is very relevant. I'm afraid that I see a kind of naivety in a lot of people working with these standards because they take for granted that internet is just one internet, and they seems not to be aware that we have a strong DLT initiatives on China that are totally out of their firewall, their national firewall. I think that fragmentation of internet is something that could happen in any moment. So I would like to ask Emilio, that probably has a more competent view on these more political issues, if it's appropriate that we continue doing standardization on technologies that are quite immature, and probably is a bit inappropriate to mix research projects with standardization. Typically, standardization has been happening in technologies that were mature enough to be implemented in a more or less homogeneous way. And I'm not sure if currently these technologies are in this maturity level yet. In fact, I think that until something similar to what happened with computer graphics, that is, until they were moved to hardware, they didn't achieve performance enough to be practical for most usage. And I think that probably the technical standard that are being discussed on the European Telecommunication Standard Institute could be more appropriate in order to provide DLT that are scalable and so on. But there is a lot of interesting issues that should be discussed. And I think that, of course, even if we are not able to agree on technical standards, I think that technical reports, for example, the technical reports that has been developed in the International Telecommunication Union are very, very relevant to our activities. And I think that probably what we have is a lot of competing standard setting bodies, including IEEE and US and so on, that are probably trying to manage the standards in a decision that is not appropriate for us.
Mm-hmm. One super topic we will gather for our event at the end of the year. This fragmentation of internet is a great topic to tackle in the event. Before I give the floor to Albi and Vara for the closing remarks, and I want to ask one sentence, one simple sentence.
No, I think that it's amazing to see that we have to think in how can we move forward with a concrete initiative. This is it's great to have you here, Cory. Have the possibility to have the face of the Latin American countries in the standardization body and the CESAR, and the connection that you have, and the connection that you have with the UNE and the European Commission, and this I think that we have to identify another opportunities for, or maybe another meeting, just to work with topics that could be the focus of our work for the next year or the next period. But please, because the time is a winner. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Albi, and thank you to all the speakers for joining us today. I can only second what Albi mentioned. We are planning and will be planning more events and discussions on these topics that were raised today. The next event that we are indeed holding on similar topics is one day whole day event called Joining Forces for Standardization, taking place on the 1st of December. So we would be very happy to have you there and possibly participate at some of our panels. We will launch the promotion of this event very soon. That said, I wanted to thank all of you for being here today. The recording will be available on INATBA's website shortly. And we will also share the presentations with the participants. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Adiós.
Thank you. Bye.
Hasta la próxima.
Sí,
Muchas gracias.
seguro hasta la próxima. Gracias.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Adiós. Gracias.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Albi, Vara, super.
Bye.